Good evening. My name is Mary Nally, and I am the director of the Center for Campus and Community Engagement here at Ohio University. I'd like to extend a welcome to all of our guests this evening here in the Baker Theater, as well as those attending through our live stream. We're excited to host an event that is inclusive of all of our campuses and communities near and far. Before we begin our program, I want to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Sayers, Dean of University College and Senior Vice Provost of Undergraduate Education and Student Success, to the stage to share her opening remarks.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm so honored to welcome you all to Making an Impact, our community-based internship showcase. I can't think of a better way to come together and celebrate the importance of community engagement as a form of experiential learning that provides mutually beneficial experiences and authentic outcomes for our students and for our community partners, especially in these distinctive places that we all call home. We know the value that internships provide to student success, both in deep learning now and in who they become in the future. And we know that students who engage with communities develop an increased sense of social responsibility, higher cross-cultural competency. They develop an increased commitment to civic engagement, learn to apply and deepen their learning in new contexts, and they increase their leadership and their communication skills. This deep impact could not occur without the authentic partnership of our many community colleagues. I am so grateful for all of you that contribute to the education and to the success of our students. And I'm looking forward to celebrating these powerful partnerships that we will have time and a little bit of opportunity to hear about later tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Sayers. The Center for Campus and Community Engagement supports the student, staff, and faculty on all campuses and all communities, locally as well as nationally and internationally, in practicing ethical and impactful community engagement. We support community engagement through curricular and research areas, as well as co-curricular experiences through volunteership, internship, and voter registration and education. We support this through facilitating engagement, providing resources, demonstrating impact, and creating opportunities for students, staff, and faculty to explore our communities, especially to build awareness and appreciation of their unique strengths and assets. Naturally, there is a spectrum of community engagement, as these practices can take many forms. There is a distinction, however, on this spectrum. On one end, you can have what may be called thin engagement, where we're engaging in or on a community, such as community service and outreach programs and traditional teaching and research methods. These are great, but they don't necessarily have the depth of what we could call thick engagement, where we engage for and with our communities, which could look like long-term partnerships for internships, participating in community task forces, and community-engaged curriculum and research. As we move from thin to thick engagement, the tangible benefits increase for our students and for our scholarly activity, and our communities are empowered and changed for the good. It is essential to understand the critical ingredients of community engagement, which include recognizing and respecting our community partners as experts with vital and authentic context that informs our work, committing to a process that includes joint design, ongoing communication, and mutually beneficial outcomes, ensuring reciprocity throughout the planning, implementation, and conclusion of each partnership, and evaluating for reflection on continuous improvement. Let's also clarify our understanding of community. Community does include nonprofit organizations, but it doesn't end there. It can include locally owned and operated businesses, governmental agencies and coalitions, schools, international partners, and much more. Essentially, a community is any identifiable group of individuals that share similar interests, concerns, and needs. The Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning is the institution that sets the national standard and best practices for community engagement at academic institutions. And we here at Ohio University are striving to achieve these standards, and the development of community-based internships is a component of this institutional priority. In 2019, the center piloted a community-based internship model, offering dedicated students the opportunity to actively engage in community-based work. These paid internships, funded by the center and at no cost to the community partners, provided students the chance to explore, contribute, and grow in public sector organizations that are committed agents of change, in their communities. While there are many traditional internships and field placements available to students, these community-based internships are unique in that they are jointly designed to meet community-identified priorities, involve intentional reflection for the students, and have outcomes that have regional impact. Tonight we will hear from 3 such projects, including from the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, the Southeast Ohio History Center, and Rural Action and the Farm to Ohio Initiative. Moving forward, the center hopes to secure funding to expand this pilot into an ongoing program for community organizations and students to contribute a lasting and wide-reaching impact for Southeast Ohio. So if you're interested in learning more, you can visit our website, follow us on social media, and please do stay afterward for the reception. There are refreshments, as well as an opportunity to network with those that you'll hear from this evening. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first set of speakers. From the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, I'd like to invite Gary Guzman, the president of the Mayor's Partnership for Progress and the mayor of Amesville, Steve Patterson, vice president of the Mayor's Partnership for Progress and mayor of the city of Athens, as well as David Giddens, undergraduate in political science and pre-law. Also part of this project, but is not able to join us tonight, is Connor Kachansky, recent alumnus, from political science and pre-law. I introduce them, but then I still keep talking. So before I turn it over, I wanted to explain some background. This was a pretty unique experience in that this internship came to be due to a partnership between my center and working with Lisa Cohens, the Director of External Affairs in the College of Arts and Sciences. Together we applied for a mini grant through the Experiential Learning Fund that was funding pilot programs. And I had known from my past experience, knowing Gary and Steve and many other elected officials, that there was a high level of expertise among our political officials, but a lack of capacity in their organizations, and knew that they may be interested in hosting some community interns. And so we worked together to create this opportunity, and also as we went along, brought in additional partners from the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs, the Athens County Planner's Office, the Ohio University Center for Law, Justice, and Culture, and the Buckeye Hills Regional Council. So this is truly a very broad and joint effort. And without further ado, I will turn it over.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm going to give you a brief history of the Mayor's Partnership, and then we're going to go into the specifics of the project that happened this past year. Again, my name is Gary Guzman. I'm the mayor of the village of Amesville. I started my 3rd term in office in this January. The Mayor's Partnership has been around for almost 25 years, and it was started by the then mayors of Marietta, Jackson, and Chillicothe. And they got together and they were in a meeting in Columbus, and they talked about the challenges they faced as mayors, which all mayors face across the whole country. But they also talked about the challenges they faced specifically in being leaders in Southeast Ohio. And they felt that there needed to be a forum that would help them and newly elected mayors to grapple with those challenges. So one of the goals initially they set out to work on was to support and mentor new mayors that were elected to office. So even if you've been in a council for a number of years, when you first become elected mayor, there's a lot of challenges and things that you don't know about even if you were serving on a council. So it was an opportunity for mayors who had been around the block a few times to share their information and to mentor and work with people that were new to the office. Because when you think about it, when I first came in as a mayor, I had been on council for 3-4 years, but even in a small village, we have a parks and recreation, a fire department, a police department, a streets department, water and wastewater division, a finance office, and personnel. So that covers a lot of territory that an individual serving for the first time has to get used to dealing with. So that was one of the early purposes, was to be able to support those individuals in finding the connections at the state and national level to do a better job in those arenas, but also just other support for dealing with constituents and dealing with your councils. Another thing was to talk about those challenges. And really what that led to in talking about the challenges is what had different communities done in seeking solutions to funding issues, to criminal justice issues, to all kinds of other things that arise. And in essence, that in the end became a way to talk about best practices in municipalities and leadership. So there were conversations among mayors that say, well, you know, we got hit with this by the EPA in our wastewater division. We don't know how we're going to rectify, deal with this, but somebody may have already been through that and able to say, here's who you need to talk to, or here's what you're going to have to do, here's where funding is available, and so they can provide that kind of support to get people a little further down the road in terms of working with their municipality. So those were two of the early and main emphasis in terms of the Mayor's Partnership for Progress. And by the way, we have grown, we started with 11 counties and we're now up to 17 counties. In the last few years, we've had a number of new mayors come and say, my county's not involved in the partnership, but we'd like to be involved. And also very exciting, this is kind of on off to the side, but this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. At our last meeting, we had 5 new mayors that were women from municipalities from Southeast Ohio, which we think is fantastic. But beyond 2 of the things that I talked about before, the best practices and being mentorship and support, the mayors could also commiserate about their situations because we all deal with councils. There are personalities and issues on councils that you have to face. But the last few years, we've specifically gone into something that an arena we hadn't done much before, which was advocating policies with the state of Ohio. We've often been on the short end of the stick in Southeast Ohio in terms of funding, in terms of erosion of home rule, and in terms of a number of other factors. And a few years ago, we decided that it was time we started to advocate in Columbus about things that the mayors and the municipalities in Southeast Ohio needed. And Mayor Patterson will talk a little bit more about that when he gets up. But there have been needs that have either been missed or left out, or things that have even been taken away. One of the things, what we started to do 3-4 years ago was put out a position paper with our top 10 positions, basically. And a number of years ago, the state cut the local government funds in half, which had been there since 1937. Now, this was a big blow to a lot of our communities, and rather than just sit there and worry about it, we sent a document to the governor at the time saying, this hurts us, and this is how it hurts us, and we'd like you to reconsider. Now, in that arena, we weren't successful with that, but we finally decided as an organization we were going to take positions of policy with the state of Ohio, and we continue to do that, and I think that's important. And then the thing, if you get into the internship, we also wanted to build capacity for municipalities. Do we have the slide for the municipalities that, I represent, and a lot of our mayors represent, very small communities. I don't have any full-time staff at all in Amesville. And so the capacity to do things, the capacity to get grants, the capacity to work on policy issues, the capacity to deal with water and wastewater when you don't have the funds to hire full-time is really, really challenging. And so this internship and other things have been a venue or a way for us to bring folks in and help us working on those kind of capacity issues, working on policy issues, working on funding, and a number of other things. So That's one of the things that we wanted to do moving forward over the last few years. And one of the ways that we've also done that is there's a program, a national service program called VISTA. It's been around over 50 years, Volunteers in Service to America. So we wrote a grant to the Serve Ohio Commission and to the State Commission for Volunteerism, and we were able to get 2 VISTAs and have them access and available to us for the last 3 years, working on policies, working on funding for things. Jack Freck and Randy Lambert are here tonight, who are our 2 VISTAs, and they'll be available for question and answers later on. So, but that was a great move forward for us, begin to get some support to work on things, because in the day-to-day existence of a mayor, you're filling potholes and you're answering complaints and you're dealing with all that. So a chance to have somebody thinking out front and looking at what can we do down the road in terms of restoring funding, in terms of supporting our communities and our constituents who may be losing benefits like food stamps, child care, source, all those kinds of things. That's a really big help, because that allows us and the whole partnership to look further down the road beyond just the day-to-day activities. So thank you.
So this should be an eye-opener for you as you're looking at, these villages that have very low or no FTEs, on their staff. To kind of put that in some level of reference for those of you who live in the Athens area, Athens, we have about 190 full-time employees. During the summer months, we increase to about 100 or 230 with our seasonal staff that comes on board and part-time. But that said, what you're looking at is, in a lot of cases, even for the city of Athens, a lack of bandwidth to be able to get some of that. It's not even wish list stuff done. It's the stuff that we know that we need to get to, but it ends up taking a second or third order in terms of us being able to look into this. I also want to put one more thing that Gary just mentioned into some level of reference for you. The city of Athens, 10 years ago, our local government fund was about $900,000, give or take. Now it's down to about $350,000 because of cuts. That hurts. That hurts, and also that keeps us from being able to get to some of our wish list items. So when Mary and Lisa Cohen came to Gary and I for the Mayor's Partnership for Progress and said, hey, we were able to get this grant, and it's a quick turn on this grant to be able to fund interns to work for the city through the summer. And most of you know me. I'm sitting there going, experiential learning, hello. I have things that I would love for you to do for the city of Athens. However, there's a greater good, and that is the Mayor's Partnership. Had to be a technology glitch sooner or later, right? And so the Mayor's Partnership for Progress sat down and we went, okay, what are some of the things that we would really like to start attending to that are those things that sometimes are a bridge too far for us? And kind of going from the bottom up, EPA consent decrees, these are terrible. If you accidentally, or hopefully not purposefully, but you have a wastewater treatment plant discharge into your local river, EPA will come down on you, and the impact is serious. I know that there's some municipalities within our region, Mayor's Partnership footprint, that have consent decrees to the order of about $11 million. If your municipality, if your budget is, 2, maybe 3 times that, you're in big trouble. And so we wanted to see if that would be one item that we could look at. Another is source water protection plans. These are vital for any community. The review of hometown rule. So this almost dovetails with the local government fund, where we're seeing what is federal and state preemption, where our home rule ability to self-govern gets stripped away in varying degrees. The most recent one, just FYI, is the ban on bans for plastic bags. That was a preemption coming down. It has cleared the House. And who knows where that's going to go at the end of the day. But again, that's a preemption. That's where the state says, we know what's better for you than you know what's good for yourself. And so that was one item. Another one was broadband. I mean, this is a big deal. We all know this. Especially within the footprint that is the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, the 15, soon to be 18. We're hoping to pick up Tuscarawas, Coshocton, or Tuscarawas, Highland, and hopefully Muskegum. In the Mayor's Partnership footprint. But we see so many areas where they're struggling, and where I really worry. I worry about not only telehealth, employment, being able to telecommute, economic development, but also education. You know, I'm looking at students in elementary K through 12 who may not be able to operate in the megabit world, let alone, or megabyte world, let alone the gig world, that the kids that they might be sitting next to when they go to college are going to be that active in knowing how to do that. And a lot of our kids struggle with the kilobyte world, which is ridiculous. And the last thing at the very top is audit research and audit report. One of the things that we found is that a lot of the new mayors, and even those of us who have been mayors for a little while, this is my second time around, is understanding the impacts that you incur financially if the state comes in and does an audit, and it's the audit price tag can sometimes be overwhelming. So where we landed with this fine young gentleman standing next to me, David Giddens and Connor sat down with us and listened to what was interesting or of most importance to us. And the two that they decided to take on was the audit research as well as strategizing Southeast Ohio broadband development. And so they really, really went to work and started looking into what are some of the big mistakes or common mistakes that municipalities find themselves in when it comes to the audit. And what are ways in which we could have that resource right at our hands to where we're coming in, either new mayors coming in or seasoned mayors, and understanding these are things that we've got to watch out for. The other was, again, strategizing with the broadband development. If you haven't downloaded this app, I think you can still download it. It's called Test IT or Test It. It's fascinating. Anywhere you are within the state of Ohio, you can sit there and press this button, and it'll tell you what your download speed is and your upload speed. And Connor and David were great in helping us not only review the app and get information out to the Mayor's Partnership, but also explore and identify strategies for performing access. One last thing before I turn it over to David. David also had, early on in Mayor's Partnership, he traveled an agonizing 50 minutes up to Marietta for the Buckeye Hills Regional Council meeting, to where I introduced him to the group and then came back again. So he got an earful from me as to what it was like to be in a leadership role. So David, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So for our two projects that we primarily worked on that Mayor Patterson and Mayor Guzman assigned to me and Connor, sadly he couldn't be here today, was the audit pricing, was solutions to audit pricing, and also working on the broadband gap. So the first one, just to give you a little background, recently the state has passed state legislature, which puts the price on state mandated audits from the state onto the budgets of the municipalities, which strains their already small budget. So our issue was when these municipalities are audited, if issues arise on their audits, they have to get re-audited. So me and Connor's job was to figure out what were these main issues and put together 3 solutions to help with this. And as you can see, the 3 bullet points right next to the picture are the 3 things we came up with. And also with the broadband gap, as we know, if you step off the campus of OU in Athens, the risk of you getting Wi-Fi or any kind of internet access is very low. So our main thing was to figure out how to get the app tested that Mayor Patterson was just talking about into the hands of people within the community. So the two solutions we came up with was making mayors have a Facebook post, because actually a lot of municipalities within the MPP program actually have a Facebook page with actually very big followings. So we had them post about that, which actually boosted downloads. And also the other thing was we had them post flyers and within communities such as schools and also community centers around their area. So here is our me and Connor presenting our work to the Mayor's Partnership for Progress at one of their monthly meetings. And I would like to say, presenting in front of over 20 mayors, representatives from the many state officers, such as Lieutenant Governor's offices, the state auditor, it's a very humbling experience. It also helps boost your confidence, which allows me to help you present in front of y'all today. That was one of my main takeaways from this internship. And then here, this is Connor, who sadly graduated and couldn't be here with us today. So here's a little quote from him. And then also, one of the main takeaways from this internship for me was learning about getting a bigger appreciation for local government. A lot of these mayors are part-time mayors, which I didn't know was a thing before this internship. But so they work a regular 9 to 5 like most of us, and still in their spare time give back to their community. And even though they're part-time mayors, they still have a full-time responsibility within their community. And to me, a lot of times in this world today, we look at the world as what can the world do for us? But with these mayors are the true embodiment of what can I do for the community. And that was one of my main takeaways from this internship.
And I wanted to share, just going off of David's comments, that is exactly what's happening right now. Mayor Patterson had to leave for a city council meeting, and Gary Guzman is on the Southeast Ohio History Center Board of Directors, and they have a meeting tonight as well. So they had to excuse themselves. But you can see that the lasting impact of this internship, even though it was just an intensive 8-week experience, the resources that David and Connor created now exist in perpetuity on the Mayor's Partnership for Progress website and are currently being used to help onboard and orient those new mayors, and will continue to be able to be utilized in that way. So this is really, a great example of how community and university can partner together to provide excellent professional development and career experiences for students, while also really helping sustain our broader communities. So I want to thank them again, and if you're interested in learning more about the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, there's their website. And as Gary mentioned, I'd like to give recognition to, excuse me, I'm having a cold, so talking is a little challenging right now. I'd like to recognize Jack Freck and Randy Lambert, the AmeriCorps Vista members that work with the Mayor's Partnership for Progress. You can speak with them afterwards. And I also want to thank Kate Lehman, representing the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Affairs. All right, community-based internship number 2. I'd like to invite Brad Davis, Collections Manager at the Southeast Ohio History Center, as well as Jordan Zindiak, graduate student in history, and they will share with you about their program. And if you can stand at the podium or off to the side this way, you'll be better in the light. Okay. Am I able to just use
Good evening.
Yes.
How are y'all doing? Good. Well, first off, I want to say thank you for coming and celebrating the community-based internship project. It's been very beneficial for the both of us. I am Brad Davis, the collections manager and curator over at the Southeast Ohio History Center, and this is...
I'm Jordan Zdenak. I'm a master's student at the University of Ohio, and I study race relations during Reconstruction to the Progressive Era. So our community involvement, our collaboration revolved around the tragedy of the lynching of Christopher Davis. This occurred here in Athens in 1881. Christopher Davis was a farmhand, a father of 2. He was accused of attempted murder and assault of a white woman, Lucinda Lucky, who he used to work for. He was ultimately lynched as he awaited trial in his jail cell. So basically our work has now involved 4 organizations: the Equal Justice Initiative, the Southeast Ohio History Center, Ohio University, and the National Association for Interpretation. So this project for me began when my advisor, Dr. Jellison, introduced me to a coalition working together to spread awareness about this lynching. And we ended up working with the Equal Justice Initiative, who basically focuses on confronting racial terror and the legacy of lynchings. And they're actually going to fund a marker to commemorate Christopher Davis and to tell his story and to spread more awareness about this event. So this was no better time for me to arrive at OU. This was, I study race relations during this era. So basically, I just knew this was an important story that needed to be discussed further and that many people were actually unaware of. So my research began. Ada Woodson-Adams actually helped me get started. She was a local historian, a genealogist, member of the Southeast Ohio History Center, and a member of Mount Zion. And she previously had gathered information, census records, newspapers that she shared with me, so I didn't have to start from scratch. I had some help to get going. And then in January of last year, I participated in the certification for interpretive guide training that was offered by the College of Arts and Sciences, hosted by the National Association for Interpretation. So this program trained me to provide interpretive tours to the public, and I was with Jessica Siders during this, and so my final project was on the lynching of Christopher Davis, and this caught her attention and made her think, well, maybe an internship would be nice to have and to collaborate, and this is when we started talking to Mary Nally and Lisa Cohen, and they were able to fund my research and start to set up an internship. Yeah, so I began more extensive research, and basically I just kept finding a lot of biases. Almost every newspaper I found just assumed his guilt. There was no formal investigation that took place, no attempts to prove his innocence, and no attempts to look into mob action. So there was actually members identified, and the community supported the lynching so much that no prosecution ever took place to identify members that were involved. So I then traveled to Chester Hill to the Multicultural Genealogical Center, and I finally found a collection of newspapers. It was the Meigs County Republican. I found a collection, the Michael Perdope collection, that was there, and the Meigs County Republican actually suggested his innocence. So I was excited to finally find something new and different that added complexities to the story. And Christopher Davis was from Meigs County, so they were kind of able to attest to his character a little bit more, and some reasonable doubts started to surface. And new information basically came to the forefront, and Brad and I were able to make an exhibit based on this information.
So obviously this is a very tragic story that happened in our history down here in Southeast Ohio, and the research really brought about a bunch of interesting information about local history that we wanted to bring to the forefront of not only the city of Athens but Southeast Ohio. And there were several ways that we could do that. Essentially, the first way that the local or the History Center could get involved was developing an exhibit to commemorate Christopher Davis and this tragic story that happened. Basically, I want to say that this exhibit would not have been possible without the research done by Jordan here and the culmination of all of these efforts and organizations and groups coming together. And that's kind of what local history and community-based internships are all about, is bringing these stories and these opportunities together to share a broader history and understanding moving forward. So the exhibit was developed by Jordan and I, and it was a process, let's just say. As most exhibits are for any of you museum folks, it's hard to find the right way to portray this story and to really bring this information to the forefront, especially something as sensitive as a lynching. And so bringing that information out is not only tricky, but it's also touchy and hard, and it brings apart difficult conversations and discussions. Discussions that need to be had, essentially. And so I came in about halfway through this project, and I met with Mary Nally and Lisa Cohen, and she brought all of these groups together to do several things. First of all, the exhibit, as I mentioned before, but then also a commemoration event that happened between several different organizations and groups. It was a large process. It had to do, thankfully, to the efforts of OU and many other groups, such as the Mount Zion Restoration Project, I believe, and the Equal Justice Initiative, the History Center, so many different groups coming together to commemorate this event. Also, one of the things that should be mentioned is this was largely done, sorry, give me a second. This was largely done thanks to OU, mostly because it fell upon their Black Alumni Weekend as well. And so we figured that a commemoration event and the coming together of these organizations just felt like it was the right time to present this information and develop this discussion. So the commemoration took place on a Saturday morning during the Black Alumni Weekend events, and really we had expected maybe 70 people to show up to this event, and instead we got over 200 people to show up to this event, which was over 300 people, sorry, to show up to this event, and it was incredible. So many different groups speaking, so many different representations from all across the state came to commemorate Christopher Davis and recognize that this was a part of local history and an aspect of our, heritage in a sense. And recognizing that although our history can be dark, we can recognize it and learn from it and grow from it. So it was great. We had a soil sample collection that in those jars right up there. We put soil from the spot that Christopher Davis had been lynched into these jars, and they're on display at the Equal Justice Initiative. Is it Montgomery? No.
Montgomery, Alabama.
Montgomery, Alabama.
At the Legacy Museum.
And at the Southeast Ohio History Center, where the exhibit is still up on display and is still bringing up these conversations and so on. It was a beautiful event. Many of you in here tonight were there, and it only led to greater things. So part of those greater things are our efforts are revealing a historic marker, essentially, to commemorate this event, to recognize this event, and to make sure that our community doesn't forget it. And so also, we are having an essay contest beginning February 1st, where the local schools can write about this and explore this topic further. So,
Local high schools.
Local high schools, yes. 9th to 12th grade, I believe.
Yes.
All right.
So there are many benefits to this community-based internship. First, personally for me, this really impacted my future and my career as a historian. It gave me experience with public history and curating an exhibit. Also, I had a lot of recognition in the media. The news just came to interview us from Channel 11, and I also was quoted in the newspaper, so this will also help in my future career. Also, just highlighting local history, I think, is very important. It's important to acknowledge so members can come to terms with their past and to help make a better future. And I just feel like a lot of the times people tend, when they think of history, they think of big events. But I also think it's important to know your local history just so people spread awareness that everyday people are just as important as the big events and the names that we constantly hear.
And I just want to follow up with what Jordan said about local history, is that this is exactly what local history and community partnerships do, is they allow us to develop these discussions and do these wonderful events that commemorate both these good and bad things through these smaller communities. And that's local history. That's history in general. That's what history does more than people think. It's not just writing books. It's also helping your community and bringing about wonderful things. On top of that, it allowed the History Center and me to do community outreach and to network with organizations that we've worked with before but have never really brought all of those together into a room And moving forward, that can only strengthen our community as a whole. And so, yeah, it was great. It was wonderful. And I hope it happens again. So, yeah, and that's all we have.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you so much to Jordan and Brad for their wonderful presentation. I also want to recognize Jessica Siders, who's the director at the Southeast Ohio History Center that worked with Jordan on this project. I would like to also recognize Dr. Catherine Jellison from the History Department, Ken Bowald, the Certified Interpretive Guide Instructor in the Patton College of Education, Sue Riggy, member of the Athens chapter of SURGE, Showing Up for Racial Justice, Ada Woodson Adams, a lifetime member and president of the Multicultural Genealogical Center in Morgan County and board member of the Mount Zion Baptist Church Preservation Society, as well as on the Southeast Ohio History Center. If you'd like to learn more about the Southeast Ohio History Center, here's their website, and I encourage you to go and visit their current exhibits. We have one more presentation. So this is a very exciting group to me, as I was engaged with this project a little bit in my previous life as Executive Director of Community Food Initiatives, and was privileged to remain involved in my position now as Director for the Center of Campus and Community Engagement. So I'd like to invite up Tom Redfern, Director of the Sustainable Agriculture Forestry at Rural Action, Dr. Teresa Moran, Professor of the College of Arts and Sciences, and the Sustainable Living Hub Coordinator for the Office of Sustainability, as well as Joy Costanzik, graduate student in sociology, and Margaret Gatanye, graduate student in both the International Studies Department as well as the Masters of Science in Environmental Studies program. So let you all come up. And you need to all stand off to the sides to be able to be.
Is this good? Thanks for forward. Oh, in the light, got it. So as Mary said, my name is Joy Costanzik. I'm a master's student in the sociology program on campus. I'm also the food studies graduate assistant. And I'm here today with Margaret Gatonier. She is an international graduate student, and she's in the Center for International Studies as well as the Voinovich Environmental Studies program. Our community partner is Tom Redfern, who is the director at Rural Action in their Sustainable Agriculture and Forestry. And he is also Dr. Moran's community partner in 4 years of Sugarbush Foundation grant funding. And then this is Dr. Teresa Moran, who is the Food Studies Director and the Sustainable Living Hub Coordinator with the Office of Sustainability. And we wanted to thank you all for having us tonight, and we're excited to share our community internship experiences with you.
So thank you, Joy. The impetus for the Farm to Ohio Working Group research comes from Investing Opportunities. This is a publication from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis, published in 2017, which provides evidence that the most effective and efficient way to strengthen a regional food system is through institutional procurement. That is, large institutions like universities, school systems, hospital systems, and prisons using the power of their food dollar to strengthen regional food production. And so we had this idea that the Farm to Ohio Working Group would be a way to strengthen our regional food system. And thanks to Sugarbush Foundation funding, we established, myself with my community partners, Rural Action and Community Food Initiatives, we established the Farm to Ohio Working Group. The members of this group are Culinary Services, Gwen Scott, who's here, and her team from Culinary Services, the Office of Sustainability, Elaine Getz and her team back there, along with the Center for Campus and Community Engagement and the grant awardees. What we are doing is looking at ways to help keep more of Ohio University's food dollars local to strengthen our agricultural producers.
So Rural Action operates the Chester Hill Produce Auction, which is a social enterprise and a food hub in Morgan County. You can see it pictured there on the left. And two barriers we identified through the Food to Ohio Working Group to sell local food from this food hub to the university was, first of all, we had to understand their procurement structures, how we had to work within their processes for purchasing local food, and we also had to make sure that the food they were getting was as safe as possible. So for us to do that, we needed to secure some GAP certification for the producers, which basically that's good agricultural practices, third-party certification, which is an audit system to make sure the farmers have, record keeping and water testing, et cetera.
Having identified these two gaps, we needed some capacity in order to research how to overcome these barriers to getting more local food in our food system. And through the Center of Campus and Community Engagement, we were so fortunate to have the funding for two wonderful graduate interns. Joy Kostanzik worked on institutional procurement. Joy was the outstanding sociology undergraduate student when she graduated from OU, and she was also the outstanding graduate student last year. Her preliminary research on this project led her to be awarded the inaugural Presidential Research Medal last year. Joy spent the summer working with Culinary Services to investigate the instrumentality of procurement. And we were also extremely fortunate to have Meg Gatonier as our other intern. Meg comes to us with extensive experience in European Union agricultural certification processes. She has in-depth experience in working with fisheries in Kenya to enable exports to the European market. Meg, under the direction of Rural Action, was able to shepherd local farmers and the Ohio Student Farm through the GAP, that's Good Agricultural Practices certification process, in order to enable sales to central food facilities. First, we'll hear from Joy, and then Meg will follow.
So the main goal of my internship was to understand university procurement systems as a whole. The first goal we had was to understand tracking and metrics so we can see how our peer institutions are bringing local food onto their campus and how they're collecting that data. The second thing I tackled was understanding vendor outreach so we could make sure we were engaging and hitting as many farmers and producers as possible to help bring as much local food on campus as we could. And then lastly, we worked on a student engagement piece because we needed to be able to educate and inform students on campus about our project in order to increase awareness and increase engagement. So the first tangible outcome from this research was the creation of a new metric for local. On campus, we track 250 miles or the state of Ohio, but we also wanted to include another tier of local so we could really get data from this project and have data showing that we're sourcing food a little bit closer to home. So that was is the Ohio neighborhood, which we define as food grown, produced, or processed within 100 miles of the Athens campus, which you can see on this map here on the left. This definition has been integrated into Culinary Services systems and is also a part of the new sustainability plan on campus. The second thing I worked on was a local student local food perception survey, which was integrated into the Culinary Services annual customer service survey. And basically, we needed a baseline so we'd understand where our students were at when they're thinking about local food, if they know there's resources on campus, if they know what local means, how they define it. And then from there, I helped Culinary create 2 internship positions so they could have 2 students in the department constantly working on creating educational materials to educate the student body. And their first task was to create a logo for the Ohio neighborhood, which is the other image on the screen. And then lastly, my 4th outcome was creating a best recommendations packet. So I had all my research data compiled into one big document for culinary services to access moving forward. Professionally, this work was very important for me. I was able to kind of understand food systems development from a more hands-on perspective rather than just studying it. And I was also able to present this data at the Farm to Institution New England Conference in Boston last April with Dr. Moran. And as well as that, I attended a Power of Procurement conference in Chicago with partners at Ohio State University. And then personally, first and foremost, this has served as the foundation for my master's thesis, where I'm looking to understand Ohio University's role in the food system as the Southeast Ohio Anchor Institution. But it also has helped solidify my career goals. I've always wanted to work with food policy from a more macro perspective, but this allowed me to understand how policy is practically implemented on the ground and the outcomes from that. And next we'll hear from Meg.
Thank you, Joy. My story begins back in Kenya. I was working with local communities in Kenya, and my main role was to be able to implement projects that would help these farmers to be able to sell their produce to the European market. And with this extensive experience, I wanted to come to Ohio University and just get embedded into the community here and just get to learn, do they do the same things we do back there? What can I do to help with my experience? And that's when I met Dr. Moran, who introduced me to the Sugar Bush Foundation project. And later on, I was able to meet with Tom Raffner. And my role in this was to be able to help the local farmers get GAP certified so that they can sell their produce to the culinary services. Main activities that I was able to do through this internship included things like attending or participating through a training that was organized by the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And through this training, I was able to learn things like what are some of the gaps that exist that the farmers need to be aware of if they want to get into this process. The other thing that I was able to do was conduct various field visits together with Rural Action Team. And this was to help me basically just to understand what do the farmers do, what kind of practices do they do, and how can I be able to identify what are some of the minor challenges or the major hindrance that can lead them not to get GAP certified. From there, I went back to the office and sat down and came up with checklists and food safety document, both for the farms and also for Rural Action, Chester Hill Produce Auction. These documents were very, very important because they would help them prepare for this certification when it came to be audited. After that, we conducted something called a mock recall. So this mock recall helps the farmers to be able to trace their produce from the farm to the consumer. So this was to help us understand, could we be able to recall produce if something was to happen? And from there, I was also able to train a lot of students and volunteers who came to the Ohio Student Farm, just to get to them understand what are some of the things I need to bear in mind when I'm handling produce. How do I need to farm so that I make sure that I'm not contaminating this produce? We have very important outcomes from this, and some of them include things like we have 6 farms right now who have been certified to be able to sell their produce to Ohio University. We also have Chester Hill Produce Auction, which got certified on good handling practices, which is very, very good. We've seen our regional sale to Ohio increase by $15,000, so that's a good step. We've also seen regional farm sale to Chester Hill Produce Auction increase by 22.6%, all in a year. So I can say we're doing pretty good. Some of the professional outcomes from this, I had a lot of knowledge from Kenya, and I wasn't sure whether these practices are done the same. So I was able to add on to the knowledge that I have for food safety from the farm to institution, because all I did then was to be able to just help the farmers get their fruit to the European market. This one was very different because it was local, done by local communities, and very well gelled with all these partnerships coming together. Personally, it's been a great experience, you know. As an international student, when you come to a foreign country, the one thing you want to do is get embedded in their community, just to get to understand how do they do this, can I fit in here? And I just got just that. Now I have friends like Joy here who I can actually call and just have a conversation with, which is a very good thing. I will also be able to use part of the experience that I gained to work on my research for my environmental studies programs, which is good. I will hand over to Tom, who will be able to tell us a little bit more about how did this internship really benefit him as a person, but also as an institution.
So first of all, you can see this awesome slide right here. On the right, we have an example of the GAP certified produce demarcated by the label, which means that producer went through the processes that Meg outlined. So basically it becomes tremendous risk reduction for the partner, the consumer, the purchaser. And so here were actual blueberries that were purchased by the university, distributed to the university, and processed at the central food facilities, and were later made into delicious cookies. And then here on the left, we have President Nellis, Dr. Moran, our ComCore AmeriCorps member who's in the audience, Rachel, and Joy Kostancic, and some others, you know, all being able to outreach to the president on the importance of a student's farm. So that's tremendous. Major outcomes for rural action were a big increase in the capacity that we had to make sure we could do what needed to happen from the procurement side, from the facilitation of the meetings side, plus the certification side, which is a huge thing. But the other big outcome is it's always so inspiring for us as an organization to partner with people like Joy, who are like up-and-coming food practitioners, you know, that next generation, which we're so honored to work with, and also to work with people like Meg, who bring that international perspective. Because what we're always attempting, it's the old adage, you know, we're thinking globally, but we're acting locally. She could really bring that to perspective for us, and and also remains a big part of our team. Thank you for the opportunity.
There are also many benefits to the university as well from these internships. We have expanded student awareness and student engagement with local food through the Discovery Kitchen events run by community food initiatives in partnership with the Patton College's Tom Stevenson. Through this, we have increased participation in these events where students and community come together and learn about seasonality, cook and share a meal together. Also, we have joined a partnership with the Center for Entrepreneurship students. Those students have undertaken special projects to examine the value of campus farms to university food systems and to experiential learning on campuses across the United States. Those students have also undertaken special projects to evaluate how to bring to student bodies the importance of local and regional foods. So these internships have helped us, campus and community, come together through a shared goal of strengthening our food system.
And Meg and I would like to conclude with a few quick stories. Mine is about this huge pile of corn. That's Tom there, and then Alex, who was a driver for Rural Action. But over the summer, we had been working with both the farmers and culinary services on figuring out if local sweet corn could be served on campus. There's a lot of work that had to go in on the growing side for like proper like irrigation and just how to manage pests. And then on culinary side, there was a lot of work with figuring out how to process it, husking, getting all the little hairs off. That's always a lot of work. But on a huge scale, that took a lot of time on their part. So there was a lot of back and forth. And then to kind of bring it all together, I had the opportunity to eat on campus a few times a week for part of the internship. And I'll never forget when I came in to Nelson Dining Hall after those weeks of conversation, and seeing students eating corn across the whole dining court. It was a really great full circle experience knowing that our work led to that, a full farm to fork experience.
Well, have you ever had opportunity to grow something, maybe a tomato that grows outside your door, and when you pluck that tomato and put it on the table, you were like, oh my God, this was my job. So I had a chance to had a meal at one of the dining hall on campus, and as I was walking down the aisle to just get a meal, I kept asking myself, does this lettuce belong to the hash burger? Or is it from the Ohio Student Farm? I don't know. But the joy that came from just seeing how so much work I have done coming to the table was overwhelming for me. And it made me think to myself, this is what I want to do. It's so rewarding that I want to keep doing it every day. And I would encourage more students to get involved in such internship opportunities so that they can be able to just feel the kind of joy I feel when I walk into a dining hall and just eat the food. I know where it comes from and how it has been processed.
And with that, we'd like to thank Mary and the Center for Campus and Community Engagement for her support, and then also the Sugar Bush Foundation for being great support and bringing the Farm to Ohio Working Group together, and for all of you for coming out. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joy, Margaret, Teresa, and Tom, for that incredible presentation. I want to also give recognition to everyone from Culinary Services, Gwen, Kent, and Aaron Robb, Elaine Getz, and Sam Krall from the Office of Sustainability, Susie Hooser and Marianne Martinez from Community Food Initiative, and all of Meg and Joy's academic leaders and advisors who are supporting them throughout this endeavor and their graduate programs. I'd also like to acknowledge the Sugar Bush Foundation. They were involved actually behind the scenes in two of the projects mentioned today, both the Winding Road Network, that was the connecting piece for the Certified Interpretive Guide program and training that Jordan went through as part of her experience with the Southeast Ohio History Center, as well as this Farm to Ohio initiative that you just heard about. They also fund incredible other university community partnerships, and I'm sure you're aware of their longstanding reputation and excellence in doing that work. I'd also like to recognize the leaders of University College, the College of Arts and Sciences, the Division of Student Affairs, and the members of the Center's Community Engagement Committee who were able to join us today. I also want to give a huge thanks to Lisa Cohen, the College of Arts and Sciences External Affairs Director, who has been an invaluable colleague to me since I joined the university in this role. She was invaluable to me in co-planning many of these community-based internships, as well as providing support in planning this event and getting to be a part of the College of Arts and Sciences Career and Networking Week. I'd like to invite you all to please join us in the lounge for our reception with refreshments and an opportunity to engage with the speakers and fellow guests. We also do have an evaluation and a sign up for our newsletter if you would like to give us any feedback or get involved in our future. Thank you and good evening.